Yes, friends, let us come up to the third part of unit number 3, that is crisis communication. In crisis communication, you're going to learn about the impact of crisis, the role of communication in crisis, the guidelines in crisis handling, and your trust building in an organization. Now, Timothy Combs, he defined crisis as the perception of an unpredictable event. Now, this is important. Unpredictable event that threatens important expectancies of stakeholders and can seriously impact an organization performance, and this can create a negative outcomes. He further defines crisis communication as the collection, processing, and dissemination of information required to address the crisis situation. Previously, I had seen what is crisis, and then he has defined what is crisis communication. Now you find crisis is a potential or sudden event that threatens the life of the organization or the lives of the workers that is difficult to control. Let's see the impact of this crisis. Crisis has no fixed time. It can come anytime, and they can come in all shapes and sizes. A crisis is never anticipated fully. Take a good example of the present COVID-19 in the present situation. And when crisis occurs, it brings with the possibility of grave consequences. It can result in the loss of confidence, damage staff morale, and it may destroy the firm's reputation. It can have a lasting order with a negative impact. But listen, if you handle it well, the situation can be turned into a real corporate advantage, and the organization may emerge with a reputation enhanced. In the same way, COVID-19, if it's taken up in the right sense, India can have good industrial development. Now, what are the impact of the crisis? One is the emotional impact or the emotional effect. Shock, terror, irritability, blame, anger, guilt, helplessness, sadness, loss of pleasure derived from familiar activities. These are the emotional effects of crisis. Cognitive effects. What are the cognitive effects? Memory impairment, disbelief, confusion, nightmares, decreased self-esteem, self-blame, disassociation, and so on. These are the cognitive effects of your crisis. Physical effects. Some of the physical effects are tiredness, fatigue, insomnia, cardiovascular strain, startled response, hyperarousal, increased physical pain, reduced immune response. These are all physical effects. We have got the interpersonal effects. Increased relational conflicts, social withdrawal, reduced relational intimacy, alienation. All these are decreased satisfaction, distrust, feeling of abandoned and rejected are some of the interpersonal effects of crisis. Financial loss. Finance is the lifeblood of every business activity. It is very sensitive aspect of any business organization. If the financial related matter happens, it is forced its impact on the employees. Their wages get reduced. They have to work under utmost pressure. Next is tarnishing the corporate reputation. Crisis threatens the image of the organization as well. The scams of the leading businessmen have not only demolished their image but the reputation of the company as well. Even mishandling of crisis may tarnish the image of the organization. Reduction in the shareholders' value. During crisis, the value of the shares decreases or goes down as the company is not in a position to maintain profitability. Dividends may not be declared during the crisis period where the company is in a loss. This reduces the value of shares. And lastly, loss of stakeholders' trust. Especially when the issues of crisis is emotional or tied with people's core values, loss of trust with your employees, customers and partners is likely to take place and even harder to earn them back. Now, what is the role of communication in crisis? Communication during a crisis is one of the important elements of workplace disaster. It is critical to communicate effectively with the internal staff as well as with the clients and also with the media. To communicate crisis, leadership, internal communication and PR team use employee communication tool to share the updates and important company information during the crisis. Proper communication in workplace. This will help you to what? Protect your employees and other stakeholders during a crisis. They will help to build trust in the workplace. They will prevent the spread of misinformation. They will prevent panic and help the employees to feel secure. They will prevent the threat a crisis may have on the organization's strategic objectives. Reputation and viability. They may align employees with the overall crisis management strategy and enable them to work towards the same goals. Align the internal and external message. Keep customers loyal and keep the reputation of being an attractive employer. How are you going to handle crisis? What are the guidelines in handling crisis? Handling of crisis requires good management skill. If a crisis situation is not addressed appropriately, it may have to face damages. Generally, large organizations have a crisis management team consisting of management experts and PR professionals who are prepared to handle the issue even before it occurs. How do you handle the crisis? These are the steps. Number 1, take control. The first step is to take control of the unexpected situation even though nothing seems certain at that point of time. However, it will have the effect of gaining the confidence of external people. The communication executives must remember that successful crisis handling is more about attitudes and procedures. Second one, respect the role of media. Understand that media interest in a certain crisis situation is inevitable. So do not hesitate to acknowledge the problem. Be honest, open and straightforward in responding to the media. For crisis situation will be judged by the media in the same way as it would be judged by all the stakeholders. Communicate during crisis. The most important rules of crisis management is to communicate. When any crisis happens, it is essential to give the detailed information to all types of questions. It is always better if the messages get the information about any crisis from a respective organization, which helps them to not form any negative image about the organization. Take the responsibility. Taking responsibility means communicating what an organization is doing to remedy the situation. A company should always take prompt action if someone is a reason for occurring of any crisis or misinformation. Next is centralize the information. The PR department should be centralized and they should be only responsible people to disseminate information about the organizations among the masses. Establish a crisis team. A team of senior executives should be identified in order to see that your organization's crisis communication team works properly. Ideally, the organization's CEO should lead the team with the firm top public relation executives and legal counsel as his or her chief advisor. Next is establish a monitoring system. Today, the entire world is full of technological advancement. A smart PR team should be tech savvy and aware of all the technology related advancement and system so that they can handle the external communications effectively. Assess the crisis situation. At every stage of crisis situation, the analysis should be done regarding the prevailing situations every time. Depending upon the gravity of the situation, a decision should be taken to bring back the situation to normalcy. For this, regular assessment of crisis situation should be done. These are the steps or the guidelines in handling of the crisis. Now let us see what is trust building and how are you going to build trust during the crisis. Now, trust appears to be an important element in managing crisis communication. The notion of trust provides a basic awareness of why crisis communication management can be successful or can be unsuccessful. This is especially true for public trust as it is the lifeline of organizations' survival. Companies should consider a broad range of potential communication initiatives in order to restore trust and loyalty. These are the steps that could be undertaken for building trust. Be in control of the situation. First step. It is important to be in control of the situation. Being in control means three things to the organization. Number one, acknowledge the issue. Number two, make sure the issue is addressed and assume responsibility over the issue. Now, Telsa is an example of an organization that was in control of their crisis from the outset. The company discovered a quality issue that could affect rare seat passengers itself and responded by calling 1,228 sedans. At the moment of recall, Tesla had not received any customer's complaint and nor did it know of any instances where something actually went wrong. As such, they acknowledged, addressed, and took the responsibility over the issue without being under pressure from the outside world. Second, address the crisis openly and trust your clients. In times of crisis, communication is the key. In order to keep or regain trust, consumer needs to be aware of what an organization is doing to solve the problems on a personal level. Investigate the cause of crisis. Once the worst is behind you, it is time to investigate the cause of the crisis, and this enables you to make sure that it does not happen again. Fourth one is commit to change. The final hurdle in rebuilding trust is commitment to change. Organization needs to address the issue and make sure it cannot happen again. Next one is empathy and caring. Show openly that you empathize with the victims. Try to do whatever you can in order to help them. Openly acknowledge the fear, pain, suffering, and uncertainties. Competence and expertise. Maintain a good rapport with your audience so that they have faith in your competence. Reveal your role within the organization. Honesty and openness. Face the crisis situation with honesty and openness. Reveal how you pursue the situation and how you intend to deal with it. Commitment. Show your commitment and dedication by sharing in the sacrifices and discomforts of the emergency. Don't fake hardships for the cameras. Lastly, accountability. To be as transparent as possible. If the government or the non-profit money is being spent in response to a disaster, sooner or later the public and the media will demand to know whom that money or resources are being distributed. Be accountable. So that brings to an end of part C of unit number 3.